Jumping into it, I think I first wanted to know. I think from the initial release, it mentioned that you had made, I think, 3 or 4 arrests, but then there were like 11 or so other people that still you guys were looking for. Have any other arrests been made since then? Or
No, not as of right now.
and with this new law, is there a plan? Or I guess my first question actually is, do these truancy arrests that we were initially talking about, do they still count with this new law coming into effect?
They do. The law takes effect the first of the year, and so we will finish out this series of cases that we've been working on under the current law, PC 270.1. We'll finish those out. And obviously, we're disappointed that the governor signed the bill. I think it's AB 461, which eliminates that penal code, PC 270.1. However, it's not the end of the story. We still have tools at our disposal, and we intend to continue with what has been a successful truancy program in this county for many years. It's going to look similar. We're going to have to adjust things a little bit, but we still have laws on our side in order to combat this issue.
Do you know how long that law had been in effect? How long you guys had that as like a tool under your belt?
They've actually, and I have the penal code in front of me, it was effective January 1st of 2011.
Okay.
So it had been in effect for quite some time.
Okay. And so before we go into kind of how this new situation is going to work, why and how did that process work beforehand, before this new law?
Sure.
What steps had to go be followed?
Sure. Well, it all started with the schools. The schools, when they started to see a truancy issue, excessive absences, long before they involved us, they would reach out, and I should say each school handles it a little differently according to, their policies and procedures and how they want to go about it. But they would start by contacting the family, contacting the parents or guardians, and saying, "Hey, what's the problem here? Can we help? What can we do? What services can we offer to help fix this?" Then, generally speaking, at a 10% unexcused absence rate, and that's important to remember because there can be excused absences, right? And people end up sick or having other issues. So at 10%, generally there was a letter sent to the family indicating, hey, there's a problem here. Your child is at 10%. If it continued, and I should say the letter also offers assistance. All along the way, the school is saying, what can we do to help to fix this situation? And so then first letter doesn't work, second letter goes out. Second letter says the same thing. Hey, this is still a problem. You're still at 10% unexcused absences. What can we do to help? What's the issue? We need your child to be in school with us. And then if that didn't work, there was a third letter that went out. And usually at the second, certainly by the third letter, there would be a letter from our office indicating that this is escalating. We are aware of what's going on. What's the problem? What can we do to help? Is it that the child needs a ride to school or home? Is it a issue with some behavioral thing that's going on? Is it a food issue? We don't know. What can we do to help? And so that third letter would go out, and again, each time along the way, when these letters go out, that's based on a 10% unexcused absence rate. So third letter goes out, and if there's still no response, then there could be a school attendance review board hearing scheduled where it's a board who convenes. Our office is involved with that, and the school's involved. They will hear, what's going on, hear from the family, put the child and the family really on an attendance contract to try and again remedy the situation. Let's get this kid in school or these kids in school where they need to be. And if that doesn't work, then if the school says, okay, we've exhausted all of our options, we're not getting through, that's really when we become more involved. And all along the way, if the school asks us, we'll go help them with a home visit. we'll show up, we'll knock on the door, we'll say, is there anything that we can do? Is there something else going on here? And so, but after that SARB hearing, which the SARB board can decline to put them on a contract too, and can say, no, we're not there yet. But once it hits that point, it's a referral over to our criminal prosecution division where we review the case independently, and we'll file for an arrest warrant. And that's a judicially approved arrest warrant. So it goes to the court, the judge approves it. It comes back to our agency, and we'll go arrest a parent. That is last resort. I cannot emphasize that enough, that really the last thing we want to be doing is going out and arresting parents. But sometimes it's the only thing that gets through. Sometimes it is the only way to actually get through to a parent that this is that serious, there's that much at stake, and that child needs to be in school. And what underlies this is the belief that kids should be in school. There are study after study. I was looking at some again this morning about the correlation between early childhood success in school, that's hitting those reading milestones and things of that nature, and later success in life, and later reduced criminality. And that's huge. We don't want them ending up in the criminal justice system. We want these kids to be successful. We want them to have all the tools that they can possibly have to succeed in life and not end up in juvenile court or adult court where we are prosecuting them. And so a quick Google search will tell you everything you need to know, both about early childhood success and even for incarcerated individuals, the correlation between reduced reoffense and reading and learning and all of these things. So that's the drive. We believe in this. This office does. We believe strongly that these kids need to be in school to be successful. I believe that we are preventing future crime with this proactive approach. We've had a partnership with the Department of Education in this county for a really long time. Frankly, I've lost track of how long we've been in partnership and having this successful program, and really partnering with our schools and collaborating to get kids in school. Let's help them be successful and keep them out of the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. And you've kind of been saying it, but I wanted to ask, in your experience, did you find this to be effective? Did you see parents, send their kids to school after facing these arrests and these charges?
Yes, we have seen success time and time again where it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call for that family. It was a wake-up call for the child. There are times when the child certainly doesn't have clean hands in what's going on. They're being difficult, stubborn, and obstinate, doing what kids do, and not wanting to get up and go to school. And we've seen success sending that message to the kids too, because they see it. We don't want to tear families apart. We don't want to wreck households. But so we have seen success story after success story of this being a wake-up call for parents and for kids. And it stops. The behavior stops. The kids are in school, and things are exactly as they should be.
And yeah, you kind of mentioned that your office itself is fully behind using this as a tool. And do you think your office would have used this, as much as it has, or would it still be a tool you guys would keep using if you didn't feel that it was effective, if you felt that it was
No,
just.
no, it's a great question. If we didn't think it was effective, if we thought that it was doing more harm than good, if we weren't seeing these success stories, we wouldn't use this. We wouldn't be doing this. And so, the proof is there. We've seen it time and time again. We've talked to the schools. That's the feedback that we get. We have. Well, I'm a big believer in we shouldn't keep doing something just because that's what we've done. It needs to actually work. And if it's not working, and I'm talking big picture, if it's not working, then we need to change. We have a pre-filing diversion program that has been we've put out press releases about this program when we started it. We put out a 1 year checkup, and it works. And my point early on to the public was, if it doesn't work, we won't keep doing it. And so that's a great question. And yes, a resounding yes. If we didn't see this as being successful, we would do something else. And I don't want to speak for the schools, but I have to believe that they would do something else as well.
Absolutely. And then just for context, what is the jail time and the fine level you would typically see
Well,
when you're arrested?
generally speaking, parents aren't going to jail on this. They're
Mhm.
getting arrested, they're getting booked in, they're getting released, they're going to court, they're being placed on diversion, where they have to check back in with the court. They're given summary probation, which is court probation. The potential for jail is there, certainly, but again, that's not the point. We're not looking to lock these parents up and throw away the key. We're looking for them to correct the behavior, um, and get those kids in school.
Absolutely. And so now with this new kind of the removal of this law, how does that change how you guys kind of operate under these circumstances?
Well, we still have Penal Code 272 at our disposal. It's slightly different, and without getting too far into the weeds on it, we can still use Penal Code 272 to administer this program with Department of Education. It's going to change how we do things a little bit, and it's probably going to be a little bit more work on our end, putting cases together, which we're happy to do. There's no issue there. So we foresee this just being a bump in the road, and certainly not fatal to this program. So I guess, the message that I would like to put out is that this program will continue, and we will continue to do everything we can to partner with schools, to collaborate with them, and to try to effectuate positive change on this issue.
All right. And then I think my last question is you kind of touched on it earlier, but I do want to ask, obviously just a bump in the road for your guys' kind of overall operations, but do you feel that this change was a bad one, or is it just another tool being taken out of your tool belt?
I do. I think it was a bad change. We're disappointed. We've been tracking this assembly bill for quite some time, as have schools. It's the assembly bill was portrayed as righting a huge wrong. It was portrayed that parents are being unfairly targeted and locked up, and there was a lot of rhetoric that went along with the passage of the assembly bill. That's disappointing and not reflective of the good work and the positive changes that statute has brought about. And so, that's a great tool that's fallen victim to rhetoric and fear mongering, just to call it what it is. And so we are disappointed that has been taken away. It was a tremendous tool in our tool chest, but it's certainly not the end of the line for us.
All right. I think that's all the questions I had around this. Is there anything else you feel is important to mention or I haven't asked you around it?
No, I would just conclude by thanking the Department of Education and our county schools for their partnership. We talk about it all the time, how thankful we are to have that, such a long-standing partnership, and to have schools that they really truly care about kids and getting the kids off to a good start. And we couldn't agree more with that. So I just want to drive home that, this successful program, which will continue to be successful, is only because of schools and their engagement and their willingness to partner with us.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate you taking some time this morning.
Thanks, Max.
And I got the name, spelling, and your role, all that, so we can just kind of dive into the meat of this. So I wanted to understand just, both from your own experience through life and then, what you might have been hearing from local groups and the data. What was the impact of how the law was set up before your bill was passed?
Yeah, well, I think that the issue of truancy, of trying to ensure that in our compulsory education in the state of California that we are getting more kids to attend school, because we know through all the data that missing school is really detrimental to kids' health, their mental health, and their just ability to be successful in life. And so when this truancy law that was put in place into the penal code was originally enacted, it was really with the best of intentions of we need to try more tactics to get kids to go to school because we need them to go to school. They do better when they're in school, and it's all around better. But since that law was enacted, 10 plus years ago, we have seen that, you know, it really doesn't do anything to help with the truancy epidemic in California. That truancy rates have actually increased since this law was enacted. And so, as well intentioned as it was to begin with, it's not working. And in the state of California, especially as a new legislator, we need to be able to look at ourselves and see what is working and what is not, and being able to have the courage to fix and change course. And so that was the impetus for my desire to author this legislation is looking at this and saying, threatening families with jail time, with imprisonment, with fines, thousands of dollars of fines because their child is missing too much school, does nothing to actually solve the issue of getting more kids to attend. Now, if it did, then we would be having a different policy debate. But the reality is that we still need to address the issue of truancy. We still need more kids to go to school and not miss as many classes. But putting truancy in the penal code doesn't work. The data shows it doesn't work. And indeed, truancy still remains higher than it did when the law was enacted. So we need to repeal it. But we also need to now work on issues of getting more support for parents and using proven tactics that actually get people to go to school. And that's getting parents more resources, making sure that in the state of California, with almost 40 million residents, that we are having resources that are accessible in multiple languages and respect the diversity as a strength in the state of California, not as a detriment like other parts of the United States are doing. And we need to really address on the root causes of what causes truancy. And that's just a lack of funding, that's a lack of support from parents. So this is one of many series of bills that I intend to author that address the root causes of truancy and ultimately supporting our parents and our kids. And that's more resources, not less.
Okay. And so I wanted to ask, just because you said the data shows that this hasn't worked, but I kind of wanted to push back a little bit on that, just because based on the data, I mean, COVID was the major issue with truancy over the last 5, 6 years. The law was enacted in 2011, and truancy has gone up across the country. Every state, whether they have a law like this or don't, has gone up in truancy. And since COVID ended, truancy has gone down. So I guess where are you getting the idea or the data, or what are you seeing that makes it seem like this isn't working?
Well, the law was enacted way before COVID, and it was still, there was no proven instance in which threatening with imprisonment or fines by the parents, long before COVID, that actually this somehow magically worked to get more people to go to school. And so, which proves the point of, you know, that this does specifically doesn't work to address truancy. I think truancy rates have gone down with this law enacted, not because of the threat of punishment, of fines and imprisonment. It's gone because we had a historic level of resources being pumped into our school system that helped parents, that helped with after school programs, that helped get more free resources to students. The state of California in that time enacted free lunch programs. So then now parents and students knew that they were able to get a meal, a free meal in school. As a poor kid growing up in the state of California, had massive amount of lunch debt growing up because we didn't offer that. Now we do. Now parents and families know that schools are a resource so that they can get probably their first and only meal of the day at school. That's just one of many, many examples that we can point to that I believe moves the needle because it's providing direct resources and help. And again, the data will show you there. When students are fed, they're able to do better in class. When they know that they're getting that resource, they're going to go to school. So we can pinpoint to many, many examples of what I believe is helping students and helping parents. But the threat of imprisonment and fines on parents anecdotally doesn't work, but also the data doesn't show that, right? Because what happens when you ultimately go through that? Finding someone $2,000 who are because their kids are truant because they're working two and three jobs and they don't know, they're hoping that their kids can go to school on their own, or finding them $2,000 or threatening them with imprisonment takes away their ability to maybe fix their car or have a bus pass or reliable transportation to school so that they are not truant. None of those, I mean, one can say that the threat of threatening them will cajole them to go. But again, I just feel like the data doesn't prove that. You bring up an excellent COVID example, but since COVID and before, I feel like there are a lot of other uh, really attractive reasons why we are addressing that. But imprisonment and fining parents is not one of them.
Gotcha. And I know you mentioned you're hoping to kind of write more laws to kind of add on to this suite. And so and then you also mentioned that anecdotally you don't feel like you've heard this working. So I wanted to bring you stuff that I've been hearing today from our local districts and our local district attorneys who say anecdotally this has been a very effective tool. And so their kind of argument and how they explain it is that typically this was the last resort. This is the thing that they've, sent several letters, they've done hearings with the school board, and then they've had the DA step in and start sending letters and saying, we're going to do something. And then at that point, they arrest a parent, they bring them into hearings, and they say, here are the diversionary programs you can be a part of to avoid jail time, to avoid fines, to avoid doing it because you need to have your kid in school. And I guess their concern with this change, what it seemed to be, is how do they encourage parents who are very disengaged, who don't care, who just don't want to? How do they now get them to be a part of these programs without essentially, it's a carrot and stick system, I think, in their mind. And without the stick, how do they get people to take the parents? And maybe that's something you're hoping to answer with future bills, and that's why I wanted to pose the question.
Absolutely. No, I think that you're bringing up a really good point. I'm really glad you raised that point, Max, because my authored bill and future authored bills does nothing to take away those preventative metrics. And in fact, when you look at the data and when you are talking to school administrators from Silicon Valley down to San Diego and to Reading, you will see that my bill does nothing to take away those intervention steps. And the vast majority of truant kids and truant families are addressed through the many interventions that school districts do before it gets to the threatening of imprisonment and fining. That is usually, like you mentioned, at the very last resort, at the very tail end, and represents the vast majority of parents who get truancy resolved in their families for their kids before that last step even occurs. And so, which further proves the point, all of those preventative metrics uh, are proven to work, and my bill doesn't impede on that whatsoever. So school administrators are still able to address the issues directly with parents. They're able to set up the meetings directly with the families to say, hey, we're noticing this problem of a lot of unexcused absences. They will meet with the parents and then they will individually tailor that. They're still allowing for the local control to happen. The reasons why kids are truant could be vastly different in Reading versus Silicon Valley versus Los Angeles, many of which, by the way, is economic issues. It is not because parents are unwilling or unable uh, by some, lack of parenting. It is almost always economic issues. It's they're working two and three jobs and they're relying on their teenager to hoping to get the bus and go to school on themselves because they would have already having to go to work 3 hours before school even started. Or it's because they can't afford a bus pass or reliable transportation, or their car broke down, or the sort of disadvantages of being poor and living far away from where they live, or their school being chronically underfunded and not having reliable bus transportation, which is a huge issue still, especially in our rural areas. And so the bill doesn't affect the ability to have local control and to have those specific intervention metrics from school administrators.
Absolutely. But I feel, and I was hoping to get more of an answer on this, is the concern they're having isn't for those all those parents that respond to the earlier interventions. Their concern is for the parents that will see all these intervention methods, will have these letters sent, will have these hearings done, and still not go forward. I mean, we just had, according to our local DA, we had 14 different individuals who have now active warrants out there for their arrest because they've gone through all these steps, they've gone through all the intervention, and it didn't work. They didn't care. So I guess do you feel there's other tools in place to help those kids? I mean, to me, I'd argue those kids should still go to school, right?
Absolutely. And I will say to the 14 parents that in the state of California, we've issued warrants out for their arrest, their kids really aren't going to go to school when their parents are locked up. Like it just doesn't solve the root cause of the issue. So say we've gone through this whole process, and the solution to get their students to go to school more is to hurt them economically or to put them in jail. That does nothing. Like if your parents are in jail, you're really not going to go to school. There are other issues happening in your family life. If they are ignoring all of those issues to get them to that place, that's why the state of California needs to step up, and we need to provide more support working with the district attorney. I have a great relationship with our district attorney. I'd love to sit down and meet with the district attorney in your area to see how do we get more economic support, more socioeconomic support. Let's address the root causes before it even gets to a bench warrant to put them in jail. But putting them in jail, the threat of putting them in jail or issuing warrants isn't going to help the students at all. It's going to actually make it more difficult while they're in jail and while they're out of jail to address those issues. So let's work together. The legislature absolutely needs to step up, Max. There's a lot of specific examples that we need to do. And the solutions can be blanketed throughout the state of California, or they can be very specific to individual school districts. I'd love to work with the District Attorneys Association to see what more support can we be providing school districts so it doesn't get to that point to begin with. But to those 14 individuals, chances are there's a lot of other issues happening in that family's life that led them to that point. So let's look at the data. Let's talk to the school administrators, the superintendents, the professionals, and the district attorneys and say, what additional funding do you need to prevent this from ever happening to begin with? But locking them up or threatening to lock them up or imprison them or take away their economic mobility, what little they have, is not going to get there all of a sudden to them to straighten out their ways. Now, if there's data to suggest that, we would have seen it by now because it's been on the law of the land for many years now. Or, would love to come up with their ideas. Sacramento doesn't is not the place where every great idea should become law or we have all the solutions. But I do know this to be true based on my own uh, personal upbringing and based on talking to countless individuals in this education space, is that we need more resources for our parents and we need more resources for our communities who are really struggling. Most of it's economic, but there are opportunities there where some of the examples that I have met personally with these parents are issues they would love to have their kids go to school. They would love to have reliable, them needing help, but they're dealing with a whole host of issues that the state of California, I think, has a responsibility to offer and help with.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. I think that's the extent of questions I had around this. Is there anything else, though, you feel is important to mention or I haven't gone over with you?
I would just say that, I really appreciate the line of questioning, Max. I do think there are many more questions that need to be answered in this space, but know that this is my first year in the legislature, and I will be focusing a lot of the new legislation in the coming years around how do we provide those support systems and metrics. My intention with this bill is to decriminalize truancy because I believe actually providing resources and help for parents is the solution, not incarceration. But that being said, we need to step up and actually provide those resources. And it's not fair to the district attorneys. It's not fair to families if we just take away that carrot and stick options and not actually provide those resources. The state of California needs to step up and provide them. So I would love to reach out to your locals, your local district attorney, set up those meetings and come up with good bill ideas to see how can we do those preventative measures to address issues that are affecting everyone throughout the state of California, but also might be acute solutions directly in your area. But I think that's what it ultimately has to be about. It's not just a one-off, let's do this one thing. I think it needs to be the state of California. If we are going to acknowledge that this isn't working, it can't just be to take it away. We just need to provide more opportunities because I know the district attorney, the superintendent in your area cares just as much about getting kids to go to school as the district attorney and superintendents in my area. But we can't just be the tyranny of Sacramento that just dictates these laws without providing resources. And I think that's the conversation that needs to happen next is now that the governor has signed this into law, this next step needs to be, okay, now what resources and help does the district attorney, does the superintendent, does the students and teachers and professionals need to actually resolve these issues so it never gets to that point again?
And I think that's something that you mentioned there about, everyone's goal is to have kids get into school is
Mhm.
both you and the DAs that I've talked to today have cited the same data about having kids in school and making sure they're in there and making sure they're fed. And that is the way to, so it seems everyone involved from on both sides of this issue, the goal is to have kids in school is what
Yep,
it seems to be.
absolutely.
Um, so
And
thank you
the
for
solution
speaking
is
with
more
me.
resources. That's where it's at. It's just the state needs to step up and provide more resources to parents.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Do you know when you're gonna
Yeah, this
publish
should
that I
be
can
in
look out
our
for?
5 p.m. show tonight and
Awesome.
then out later on our web, on our
Awesome.
articles.
I appreciate the opportunity, Max. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.